Gel in Agriculture, brought to you with the compliments of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, Fisheries and Water Resource Management and the Barbados Agricultural Society.
Grow well, eat well, live well, right here in Bim.
Hi, I'm Jewel Ford and welcome to Gel in Agriculture. Grow well, eat well, live well right here in Bim. We've all seen the jingle. But what does it really mean and what's behind this campaign? Well, in a collaboration with the Barbados Agricultural Society and the Ministry of Agriculture, we'll be bringing you a 13-part series showcasing all of the developments in our agricultural industry. Everything from fisheries to growing crops to plant clinics, you name it, we'll be featuring it on Gel in Agriculture. I'm here at Southern Farmers Market at the Ferry Valley Plantation, where some little ones are going to be chatting with one of the agriculturalists here to talk about sweet potatoes. They're going to go into the field and get an opportunity to see the sweet potatoes growing, to pull them, and to understand exactly where the produce that is on their plate comes from. But first, I had an opportunity to talk to the Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Dr. David Estwick, where we talked about his vision for agriculture, what's behind this campaign of Grow Well, Eat Well, Live Well, and also we talked about the challenges to agriculture.
The genesis for this, the Grow Well, Live Well campaign is really centered around trying to get Barbadians to appreciate that in regards to food security and food safety, that you have assurances of that when you produce it yourself. And given the fact of international trade now allows you to import from countries something you can't even pronounce the name, and we don't have a system where under WTO rules that you can stop a person from bringing in, because under you have a reciprocal licensing arrangement. So therefore you don't know exactly what is in these products as they come in. So we thought it therefore important to try to guide Barbadians in a formal policy towards concentrating on domestic consumption of foods that we are sure are wholesome, that are nutritious, and are produced locally. And that is underpinned generally by our whole notion of food security and food sovereignty from producing the majority of what we consume. Let me just say one other thing, because I think I'm going to take this opportunity to dispel and deal with this write-up I see every day about Barbados' import bill being $700 to $800 million, and attempting to suggest that the way to deal with that is to grow more produce at the raw produce level. The fact of the matter is, when you disaggregate that $700 million, only about $120 million of that is raw produce imports. The food that is imported is highly processed food because of Barbadian orientation towards the European and North American palate, and secondarily to support a growing tourism industry that requires high-end processed foods that we have not yet moved our manufacturing along that line. So people need to make that distinction as a critical element in understanding what they're really saying in regards to the import bill.
We'll take a quick break, but when we come back, we continue our chat with the Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Dr. David Estwick, where we discuss what are some of the challenges to agriculture.
Grow well, eat well, live well, right here in Bim. Grow well, eat well, live well, right here in Bim.
We all know what some of the challenges are to agriculture, but a major challenge is predial larceny. And recently, there have been some changes made to the legislation that is going to make it tougher for people to steal produce and sell it.
That's a headache. It's a scourge. It's a disincentive. I think it is one of the reasons why many large agriculturalists that were doing extremely well would have come to agriculture. I remember when Wakefield Plantation used to produce almost everything we wanted in this country. They have taken it down to the level of a science where they used to bag everything, freeze everything and so on, and it was destroyed by predial larceny. And I have had the opportunity with my technical staff and to review the deficits in the previous legislation that created some issues in regards to why it is that the court system couldn't effectively deal with those lawbreakers. And the main elements that that were missing related to traceability issues. How do you trace the product back to where it came from? Well, the truth to me, it was same.
If a man standing left side of the road, I don't know where you got it from.
Exactly. So outside the traceability element, you then had, going along with the traceability, you then had an enforcement issue. And that enforcement issue wasn't just set around just whether they had a receipt or not. But the weakness was, are you licensed to carry out this function? It's what I'm saying. No. If you were able to say that if you are going to be a vendor of agricultural produce, these are the requirements that you have to have. You have to have your badge, your number, you have to be registered, and you have to be reproducible on an annualized basis, and so on and so on. And then you drop underneath that the traceability, which would be the receipt elements. And then on top of the receipt element, the receipts are going to be different for wholesalers, retailers, and producers. So, and then what you add an inspectorate. So you will empower inspectors to be able to go on any point where agricultural vendor is going to say, hold on, raise your license, raise your registration documents, and so on and so on, etc. And once you can produce those, something is up here. Because beyond that, the traceability then kicks in. Did you buy it from there? Did you buy it from this? So all those things are in the new legislation. And creating the administrative framework to effect that. The other part that we had to make adjustments to was the penal system. The old legislation worked under the magistrate's jurisdiction, which is a summary type offense. And as a result of that, there was a maximum for a full-time offender to the tune of $5,000, 5 years in jail. Okay, but those become neutered because the traceability and the certification and registration were not there to back it. See, so all those are now in the new legislation, but with increased penalties, we are now moving that up to the maximum within the magistrate jurisdiction, which is $10,000. And then there's a second element to it, which is which can go to the High Court. So we are moving it from the lower court to the High Court. So in other words, if you have stolen produce that is greater than $10,000 in value, but then you're going upstairs, and the punishment would escalate in relation to the value of the produce. So we are doing it just how it is done for drug pushers. Okay, and we are confident that some of those type of adjustments, along with other things that we put administratively in place, should be able to help us make a dent. But I would say this: our farmers have to decide to work together. Some communities may have to work together. And I think that we're going to have to get some support from the Ministry of Finance, where for security purposes, those security implements brought in should be given special duty provisions, so as an incentive, and other type markers that can be used to trace produce. One good one is a microdot system that works very well. You spray the item, and that item is uniquely defined by a microdot system to that point. Right? And we have seen it being tested here. The police have looked at it. The police have given it its lesson, and so on and so on. But we would have to work with the ministry to get it come in, and so it can distribute it in a proper way, etc. So a lot of work is being done to try to deal with that scourge that we think is causing us great challenges.
Grow well, eat well, live well, right here in Bim.
The sargassum seaweed has brought in an influx of young dolphin, and it's everywhere at every local market. But here's the catch. Fisheries officers say that those young dolphins can no longer reproduce if we catch them early. So what's the solution?
There are two main things that you can identify. One of them, when you're taking the animals at that small size, you're reducing the yield for every individual. In science, you call it yield per recruit. If you were to leave them to grow and take the animals, you obviously will be getting larger size, more meat for your catch. But the big problem, of course, is that you're taking them before they've had a chance to reproduce. So you're not allowing them to produce the next generation of dolphin. And that is a major worry because over time, if you continue doing that, you may not have dolphin the next year. And so you have to be very careful and not allow that to happen.
How do we get our fishermen to understand the dangers of catching the dolphin too young and to maybe hold back a little bit? Yes, they're plentiful and in big supply, but hold back a little bit rather than catching them.
There are some excuses that are coming up and such that there are a different species and that they just grow smaller. That's not true. There are young dolphin. There are just 2 species of dolphin fish in the world. And the one that we capture, Coryphena hipporus, which is what we know as our dolphin, it's 1 species. They are young of that species. And if you take them at those ages, you are risking the population down the road.
Is the fisheries division doing anything, any training, any sensitization to get them to, pull back from this practice?
For years now, because we are really getting this as a increasing problem due to the sargassum, in that the dolphin tend to be hanging around the sargassum quite a bit. And so basically the fishermen will go to where the sargassum is, and you've already collected them in an area, and so you basically can increase your capture of these small animals. But we have to, and so from the time that the sargassum became a problem, we have been putting public service information out to stop doing it, to desist from doing it. And we have to look into the prospect of legislating, setting a minimum size at below which you cannot take animals, cannot land animals of that size, smaller than that size. And that's what we're looking to do. So basically, it has to be legislation in place. The thing is also dolphin are a regionally shared stock, and we have to basically get the region on board as well. And we are going in that direction as well. Efforts are being made through the CRFM, which is the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Management Mechanism, to get the region on board and legislate that a minimum size for dolphin to protect small animals.
Christopher Parker is a fisheries biologist, and I caught up with him at a workshop being put on by the Ministry of Agriculture in conjunction with the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association. They were looking at ways of preparing cassava and sweet potato for use by pastry chefs as well as bartenders. And also, they put on a training workshop looking at the preparation and serving of lionfish. I'm Joel Ford. Join us next Friday right here at 6:30 for Gel in Agriculture.
Grow well, eat well, live well, right here in Bim.
Gel in Agriculture, brought to you with the compliments of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, Fisheries and Water Resource Management and the Barbados Agricultural Society.